When I say optimization, this is another word for maxima and minima when you will be in your college. And the maxima, it means the maximum. And when you say minima, the minimum. These two are related. It's because in the real life, we are going to minimize the cost, but you are going to maximize the profit. But too much profit, of course, is bad. Everything must be in moderation. So with that, first of all, we have to create the model. So what is the mathematical expression of the given situations or the problem that you want to maximize? With that, it needs two. The first is the critical point or critical values. The critical value actually is yun yung value ng x na makapagbigay sa atin ng maximum value ng y. Ang extreme point, yun yung combination ng x and y. Yung x na makapagbigay ng maximum value of y. So it means meron na tayong y value, meron na tayong x value. So the critical is yun yung value ng x. Ang y, yung extreme value or the maximum value. The Fermat's theorem and the extreme value theorem also will be discussed in here. Then we have the word problem. So how do we maximize something when you go to school? So for example, you go to shopping. So when the roads you take, you can minimize the time travel para mas mapabilis, para hindi tayo malate. And we are going to maximize also our personal appearance, our personality. As well as you have what food to eat at the canteen, anong bibilhin to maximize hunger satisfaction, but to minimize the cost. We know that things are good in moderation, so it becomes bad if you increase it too much or you decrease it too much. So for example, sleep. So you want to rest, and we know that over fatigue or weakness in your body, of course, is related to the number of sleeps that you take. Conditions linked to depression, anxiety, and obesity and heart problems. The study hours, of course, the more study, that means the more study hours, it means the more you have focus and the more understanding that you will get. The food intake, of course, being underweight and being overweight. So what are those constraints? We call that one constraints or mga boundaries so that you will achieve something good. So in deciding what's best in the real life, we need to optimize some quantities by controlling the other variables. So for example, in here, we have the graph of parabola opens upward. So we know that when it opens upward, the leading coefficient of the variable or the function is positive. We can get y equals 2x squared, y equals 5x squared, and so on. If 5x squared is the leading coefficient or 5 is the leading coefficient and 5 is positive, then we can say that it opens upward. And with that, there is here this point. This is called the minimum point. And in this point, there is the value of x there that will give the maximum value of y. So it means this consists of the x and y. And we know that there is here a line passing to that. And we have the tangent line. Okay. So it means very important ang ating derivative because derivative talks about the tangent line at that given point or on the curve. So it means magsisilbi talaga yung ating tangent line. Same with the maximum, of course, when the leading coefficient is negative, of course, it opens downward, and that is referring to parabola. But in other functions greater than parabolas, for example, the cubic functions, the quartic functions, so it means titingnan pa natin yung ating characteristic if that it rises up or it falls down. So it means in here also na we have a tangent line also in which it is described as the horizontal line. So it is where the point located with the maximum value of y. So there are terms that we need to consider. So that means whether it is a minimum or maximum, there is always a tangent line at that point. And that tangent line is horizontal and the slope of that is 0. Yun yung tatandaan natin. Because these concepts will give us the way on how to control the variables and are going to maximize para makita natin yung value. So for example, you will be given this function and you are going to model this accurately. So the product of a given number x and the number which is 1 unit bigger. So it means, una nating titingnan ano ang function. When you say function, yung kailangan talaga sa atin dito is kailangan yung function natin one variable lang. What if two variables? That means, yung isang variable, dapat ita-transform mo siya sa other variable so that maging isang variable na lang. But in case talaga na hindi maiwasan, that means there is something na pwede pa nating ma-substitutan. And for that, we can get the one variable. Kung meron talaga magkakaroon, then we'll do the implicit differentiation or higher derivatives. So we have the product p of a given number x. So it means our function is in terms of p of x. And there are two possible numbers that are multiplied. The first one is a number x, and this is the conjunction end in which dito yung ilalagay natin na product. So dito yung multiplication natin. And the number which is 1 unit bigger. So in here, 1 unit bigger of x is x plus 1. Diba na? Ang mas malaki sa x ay x plus 1. Kung sa number ano tayo, neutral number. So we've got the function p of x is equals to x times x plus 1, which is simplified as x squared plus x. So that is how to model. The second question are, say, the volume V of a sphere of a given radius R. So we know that the sphere is 2/3, the volume of that is 2/3 of the volume of the cylinder, the right circular cylinder. And we know that the height of this sphere is equals to the diameter, which is equal to 2r. And therefore, you will get 2/3 pi r squared h, 2/3 kasi, 2/3 times 2r. And from that, you will get the 4r cube over 3. That is our volume of a sphere. If you don't know how to derive this one, then better be familiarized, where r is a radius of the sphere. The second one is the volume of a right circular cone with radius 3 cm. So this is r, radius 3 cm. We know that the right circular cone is 1/3 of the volume of a right cylinder or right circular cylinder. So 1/3 siya of the volume of the cylinder. So we know that that is pi r squared. Each ang ating formula ng ating cylinder, and the right circular cone is 1/3 of this. And we know that the radius is 3. So we substitute there 3. We've got 3 squared, and that becomes 9. So it becomes 9, and 9 divided 3 is 3. So that means you will get 3 pi each. That is our volume for the right circular cone with radius 3 cm and a given height each. Okay. Next is the length of a rectangle with width 2 cm and a given area A. So we know that in here we are given the area which is equivalent to the length times width or base times height. And remember, you are given the width of 2, and therefore we substitute that one as 2, and this is L, and this is our area. So with that, kung kukunin natin ang length of a rectangle, now what is the function refers to the length? So it means we have, if A is the variable here, then we have the length that is in terms of A. No? And that means you got the L of A, which is equals to area over 2. Because when we divide this by 2, it means area over 2 is equals to the length. But we define this as a function, and we know that the variable L is in terms of A, then we've got A over 2. Say, for example, we have the problem, the total manufacturing cost C of producing X pencils if there is an overhead cost of 100 pesos. and producing 1 pencil costs 2 pesos. So, when we say overhead cost, that is the minimum cost. That means yun yung ating y-intercept. And the total manufacturing cost C of producing, it means yung ating function is in terms of x and the function is C of x, which is when we are having the overhead cost, it means yun yung baseline natin when the value is 0. And in every add of x pencils, there must be a multiplier of 2. So, producing 1 pencil cost 2 pesos. Kung dalawang pencil, it costs 2 times 2, which is 4. So, that means you've got 100 as the addends of 2 times x. And for that, you've got C of x equals 100 plus 2x. Another is the volume of a resulting open-top box when identical squares with side x are cut off from the four corners of the 3 meter by 5 meter aluminum sheet, and the sides are then turned up. So it means you will have your sheet here 3 by 5. It means it is a rectangular, and this is 3, this is 5. Since there are 4 corners and there are 4 squares daw na ikakat dito sa ating corners with the side of x units, that means ang ating length or ang ating 3 ay makukunan ng dalawang x. Why? Kasi ikakat daw yan ng x. And then same side in here, ikakat ng x. Same in here, this is x and this is x. So remember, kung gagawin natin siya itong box natin, yung ating corner na kinakat natin, yung square na side x, yun po yung magsisilbing height ng ating box. And we know this is an open top, so okay lang po yun. And we can determine actually that the height is x. But the problem is, what is this? Remember, kung ito ay magiging box na, so ito na yung base natin, which is yung base, which is ito naman ay magiging 3 minus x. Minus x pa talaga. So, it means 3 minus x or 3 minus 2x kasi dalawang x ang tinanggal. Dito naman, ang kanyang bago from here up to here is also 5 minus x or we've got 5 minus 2x. So, therefore, the volume is length times width times height, and the height is x. The length is 3 minus x or the width is 3 minus x, and the length is 5 minus 2x. So therefore, the volume is clearly that it is equal to x times 3 minus 2x times 5 minus 2x. That is the volume of the resulting open top box. So we'll go first the definition of a critical points and points where extrema occur. We're going first to determine what is a critical point. So let f be a function, and that is continuous on an open interval I containing the point x sub o and y sub o, or say the x-coordinate. We say that x sub o is a critical point of f. So very clear siya that that is a critical point of f. Hindi siya critical point ng ating derivative, kundi ito ay critical point ng original na function if the first derivative of the x sub o equals 0. Ang ibig sabihin nito if na-achieve na niya yung tangent line. Kasi ang ibig sabihin nito, ang slope ng ating tangent line ay 0, which is ma-attain doon sa minimum o maximum. Or the f prime of x sub o does not exist. That is, f has a corner or a cusp. So, yung mga vertical tangent. So, that is x sub o, f of x sub o. Ito yung point nating kinukuha. So, paano natin makuha itong f of x sub o? Makuha natin yun by substituting x sub o on the original function. We say that a maximum occurs at x sub o. So, i-clear natin. Maximum occurs at x sub o. Hindi yung x sub o ang maximum, kundi siya lang ang magbibigay or nandoon yung maximum. If the value of f of x sub o is the largest among all other functional values on I, that means yung largest value is the f of x sub o. It means to all neighborhoods of f of x sub o is the largest or equal to the f of x for all x and a subset of I, where I is an open interval and x is an element of that interval. So we say that also minimum of f occurs at x sub o if the value of the f of x sub o is the smallest among all the other functional values on I, that is for all f of x sub o is the smallest or less than or equal to the f of x. For all x, an element of I. So, this is an element of I. It is not a subset actually, sorry. We say that an extremum of f occurs at x sub o if either the maximum or the minimum occurs at x sub o. It means, pag sinasabing extremum, it means there are two possible. Either it is maximum or minimum, but it cannot be both. Sometimes there is an obvious abuse of terminology when we say x sub o is an extremum or an extreme point of f. So we are going to use the proper term. When we say extremum, we say that an extremum of f occurs at x sub o. So an extremum of f occurs at x sub o, or f has an extremum at x equals x sub o. Ang f meron siyang extremum doon sa x, which is yung x is equal to the x sub o. Yung x sub o, f of x sub o, is an extreme point because this is a point where you can find the extreme value. And f of x sub o is the extreme value of f. So, you are encouraged to use the above terms but are gently reminded to avoid penalizing you students for being imprecise, saying x sub o is an extremum of f. So, hindi pwedeng sabihin that x sub o is the maximum. X po yun. X sub o is the critical point in which it will give the maximum value of f of x sub o. So, x sub o is an extremum of f. Instead of f has an extremum at x sub o. Okay? Also note that the extremum points may not be unique as illustrated by the sine curve. That means yung maximum could not be unique. You could have two possible or three possible or more possible maximum or minimum. So, pag maraming maximum, that means we say relative maximum. Pag isa lang maximum, we say that absolute maximum. Similarly to the minimum. A relative minimum, it means the maraming minimum. Pag absolute minimum, isa lang. So, example 2, find all critical points of the given function. Kasi ito ang pinakaunang step. So, ano ang gagawin natin? So, first of all, sa example 1, kukunin agad natin yung kanyang derivative. So, the derivative of 3x squared minus 3x is 6x minus 3. Yun yung first natin na step. The second step is, since hanapin natin yung tangent line na doon siya mag-occur yung minimum or maximum, so automatic, ng ating derivative ay equate natin sa 0. So, pag equate natin sa 0, isusolve natin ang value ng x. Yung value ng x doon, yun yung critical point. Siya yung magbibigay ng value na maximum doon sa original. So, it means, kung isa-substitute natin ang 1/2 doon sa ating original na 3x squared minus 3x plus 4, you will get really the minimum value. Bakit minimum value? It's because the leading coefficient here is positive. So, it opens upward. So, minimum ang ating makikita. Letter B, we have here the cubic function. So, the derivative of that is 3x squared minus 18x plus 15. And we know that the factor of 3x squared minus 18x plus 15 is 3x minus 15 times x minus 1. Solving for x, you get x is 5 or x equals 1. So, okay naman dito. Wala naman tayong problema kung ang x ay 5 at saka ang x is 1 because the domain are all real numbers. So, it means the critical points are 1 and 5 because we say that x minus 5 is equal to 0 kasi equate po yan sa 0. Or x minus 1 is equal to 0. So, that means x equals 5 and x equals or x equals 1. So, the critical points are 1 and 5. Similarly, kung i-substitute natin yung 1 dito at or 5 dito, you will get an extremum. So, yung extremum ang term ko because we are not sure if this one is opening upward or downward kasi cubic siya eh. It may be pababa siya or so, dito tayo magsasubstitute ha sa original function, hindi po dito sa ating derivative. Letter C. Similar pa rin, we are going to find the derivative. So that is 3x squared minus 2x minus 1. And factor are 3x plus 1 and x minus 1. So the critical points are negative 1/3 and 1. Negative po yan because 3x plus 1 po yan. So we have f number letter D, x minus 3x raised to the power of 1/3. When you're going to derive this one, of course, you will arrive with 1 minus x to the power of negative 2 over 3. Why? Because this is 1/3 times 3, that is 1, of course. This one is 1. And since ito ay negative, so pwede natin sabihin that is 2/3, ibaba natin, and 2/3 times x to the 2/3 times 1 is x to the 2/3, then x to the 2/3 divided x to the 2/3 is 1. So you've got x to the 2/3 minus 1 over x to the 2/3. Ito yung ating simplified form of this. But this one is correct na yun siya actually. Observe that f prime cannot be 0. Kasi kung equate natin siya in 0 in here, malalaman natin, dapat i-0 ito siya. Yes. So it means x to the 2/3 must be equal to 1. So therefore, the x must be equal to 1 because 1 to the 2/3 minus 1 is equal to 0. So therefore, dito ay magkakaroon tayo ng 0 doon sa ating 1 na value ng x. But in here, yung ating kasi doon, critical point, makukuha natin siya pag i-equate natin ang derivative sa 0 or maging undefined. So therefore, maging undefined ito siya pag 0 ang ating x. So that's why the critical points are 0 and 1. So it sounds tricky, right? Next is the letter E. If we have 5 raised to the power of 5 over 4 plus 10x raised to the power of 1/4, then we are going to derive this one. Ito yung derivative niya. You've got 5 to the 4th x to the 1/4 plus 10 over 4x to the power of negative 3/4. And we know that this x raised to the power of 1/4 ay bawal po dito ang 0. Ay negative, I mean. Pwede ang 0 actually. So it means bawal ang negative sa loob ng index na positive. The fourth root of any. Bawal po ang negative. Hindi po pwede ang negative. Ang positive lang ang allowed at saka ang 0. So it means the least value of this must be 0. So 0 to positive infinity, yun yung ating domain. So kung meron tayong 5 of, pag i-simplify natin ito, of course, you can factor 5 here and then 5 times x is plus 2. We've got 5 times 2 is 10, so it is correct. This is the factor or the simplified form of this. 4x raised to the power of 3/4. And when you are going to equate this one to 0, ang mangyayari ay magkakaroon tayo ng x equals to negative 2. And we know that negative 2 is not part of the domain. So therefore, hindi po pwede ang negative 2. The second condition dapat maging undefined. So maging undefined lang ito pag x natin ay 0. So the critical point is only x is 0. So the critical point is 0. Yun lang yung makapagbigay natin ng either minimum or maximum or say extremum. Theorem 7, according to the Fermat's theorem, let f be continuous on an open interval I containing x sub o. So meron tayong open interval na a at saka b, where a at b ito yung mga boundary natin sa ating function, continuous function. And x sub o is part in here. So x sub o is an element of this open interval. If f has an extremum at x sub o, kung meron daw siyang either minimum or maximum, then x sub o must be a critical point of f. Very clear na kung ang f has an extremum at x sub o, automatic that x sub o must be a critical point of f. Diba? It follows from the definition. According naman sa extreme value theorem or the EVT, let f be a function which is continuous on a closed interval. So, on a closed interval AB, ito yung A, yung boundary sa X, and then yung B is the X sub 2, or X sub 1, X sub 2, or it could be X sub 0, X sub 1. Then the extreme values, minimum, maximum of F always exist, and they occur either at the endpoints or at the critical points of F. So it means kung naatay function na curve, at tapos may sinugdanan, may katapusan, it means yung A natin is always a candidate. Why? Because if possible, siya ang pinakamaliit or it could be ang B ang pinakamalaki or either way, pwede siyang pababa. So it means the B there or the A there is the highest or the maximum, and B is also the maximum or the extremum. So it means according to the extreme value theorem, we always consider that in the closed interval AB, we always consider A and B as the candidate for a critical point. So it is important to stress the assumptions of the EVT. Na una, it must be a function, and the second, it must be continuous. Kasi ang function, we have the vertical line test na kaisa lang din siya mag-intersect doon sa ating graph pa-vertical. That's why we are very sure na hindi siya, na ang trend niya kung increasing, that means hindi siya magbalik doon. So it means patuloy lang yun siya. On that interval that is closed unbounded. So the parabola f of x equals x squared defined on R, and we know that f of x equals x squared is as a minimum or maximum, depende sa ating ibibigay na boundary. Pero kung wala tayong boundary, hindi natin malalaman kung saan ang maximum. Pero sure tayo na may minimum. Yes. The function f of x equals absolute of x. We know that the absolute of x has a cusp. So, kung ita-transfer natin siya, so for example, if x equals 0, the absolute of x must be 0. What if i-transfer natin siya na hindi siya continuous? So, wala siyang laman doon. Hindi natin malalaman. So, it means, dapat talaga na continuous at the same time, closed unbounded para malalaman natin yung mga extreme value. Okay? Example, find the extrema of the given functions of the interval -1, 1. So, ito yung boundary natin. Yung A is -1, yung B is 1. So, that means kung ano man ang graph nito, so for example, ang graph niyan ay 3x squared minus 3x minus plus 4 is this one. That means, kung x niya ay -1, so it means in here, this is the -1, ito ang +1. Yun lang ang mga boundary na ating titingnan. Kung saan ba yun. Okay? So, with that, ang pangit ng aking graph, ano. So, with that, we have to consider the boundary. So, there is only one critical point, x equals 1/2. Yun yung sabi natin kanina. Kasi, ito ay continuation ng kanina ng example. Look back tayo. At the endpoints at positive equal -1. So, we have +1, -1, and 1/2. So, in here, kung -1, 3 times -1 squared, -1 is 1 times 3, 3, minus 3 times -1, that is -1 times -3, that is +3, plus 4, that is 7 plus 3, that is 10. So, correct, 10. Pag 1/2 naman ang value, 1/2 squared is 1/4 times 3, minus 3 times 1/2, plus 4. You've got 13/4. And if x is 1, you've got 3 times 1 minus 3 plus 4. You've got 4. So, among this, according kasi doon, kung titingnan natin ang extrema, either minimum or maximum, ang maximum is yung pinakadako. So, as ang pinakadako diri, 10, 4, 13, 4. Of course, the maximum is 10. So, it means, yun yung makapagbigay, yun yung value na maximum value doon sa ating interval na -1, 1. So, at x equals -1, yun yung value na makapagbigay ng maximum value of our function, which is the maximum value of 10. Dito naman, i-compare natin, ano bang malaki? Ay, pinakamaliit, 13/4 or 4? 13/4 is 4.25, ay 3.25. So, it means, ito yung 1/2, yung minimum. So, it means, at x equals 1/2, ito yung makapagbigay sa atin ng pinakamaliit na value sa ating f of x. Kasi ito ay 3.25. So, it means, meron tayong minima, meron tayong maxima. So, the maximum is here, which is 10. The minimum is 13/4, the minimum value. So, with that, the extrema occurs at -1 and 1/2. So, the maximum of f occurs at x equals -1 and has a value of 10. So, very clear, ha? The minimum value of f occurs at x equals 1/2 and has a value of 13/4. No, anong tawag natin sa 1/4? Of course, it is not part of the extrema. So, ito yung graph niya. So, we have here, ito yun. This is the 3.25 yung value. Okay. So, find the extrema. Number 2 is x cubed minus 10x squared. Kanina kasi, ang value natin doon, critical points are 1 and 5. But in here, yung ating binibigay na restriction is galing lang sa negative 1 to 1. So, ang 5 ay x na po. Kasi, wala ang 5, negative 1 to 1 ay negative 1. Kung sa ordered pair yun siya, 0 and 1. So, wala pong 5 dyan. So, x ang 5. But since, so candidate agad yung negative 1. Yeah. And, of course, since 1 is also candidate, so that means it is also candidate. So, clearly, that negative 1 and 1 are candidates. Yeah. Nagkataon lang siguro na pares lang ng 1. But the 5 is excluded. So, in this function, yung x na negative 1, ito ay negative 45. Saan ba ang mas malaki? Negative 45 or negative 13? Of course, mas malaki yung may kunting utang. May maliit tayong value pag malaki yung utang natin. So, it means negative 45 is the minimum and negative 13 is the maximum. So, the maximum value, negative 13, occurs at positive 1, while the minimum value, negative 45, occurs at x equals negative 1. Sa number 3 or letter C, considering the critical points of this, we know na kanina, ito yung values negative 1/3, negative 1, and 1. So, we consider the negative 1 and 1 at saka negative 1/3. Okay. I think, nasolve na natin yan kanina. So, with this in mind, fx equals negative 1, the f of negative 1 is negative 11, f of negative 1/3 is negative 25 over 27, and the f of 1 is negative 11. So, ano ang pinakamaliit sa kanila? We know that this one is negative point something. So, 0.9 no, or point, yeah. So, it means ito yung maliit, dalawa. So, that means, meron tayong relative minimum and we have one maximum. So, ang maximum point is negative 1/3 and negative 25 over 27 kasi ang malaki dito. And this one, ito yung mga maliliit. The more na mas malaki ang utang, the more na mas maliit. So, you've got negative 1, negative 11, and 1, negative 11 are the minimum points. Okay? Next, we proceed to letter D. Alam naman natin na ang f of 0 ay 0 kasi 0 is 1 of the critical points. Yung f of 1 naman dito, i-consider natin yung 1, that is equal to negative 2, and negative 1 is also 2. So, alam natin ang pinakamalaking value ay 2. So, ito yung maximum, yung x negative 1. Or we have the point negative 1, 2. Okay. While yung ating minimum point, saan ba ang maliit sa dalawa? So, ito yung maliit. So, at x equals 1, you've got f of 1 is negative 2. So, this is the minimum value. And 1, negative 2 is our minimum point. Okay?